Imagine getting a second chance after a crushing defeat, only to be tricked into a bad deal right after. That's what we find today. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Unadorned Bible, the channel where we're reading chronologically through the Bible in 1 year. Today is day 83 of that journey, and we are diving into Joshua 8 and 9. Let's get right to it. Joshua chapter 8. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear or be dismayed. Take all the fighting men with you and go up to see Ai. See, I have handed over to you the king of Ai with his people, his city, and his land. You shall do to Ai and its kings as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may take its spoil and plunder its livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush against the city, behind it." So Joshua and all the fighting men set out to go up against Ai. Joshua chose 30,000 warriors and sent them out by night with the command, "You shall lie in ambush against the city, behind it. Do not go very far from the city, but all of you stay alert. I and all the people who are with me will approach the city. When they come out against us as before, we will flee from them. They will come out after us until we have drawn them away from the city, for they will say, 'They are fleeing from us as before.' While we flee from them, you shall rise up from the ambush and seize the city, for the Lord your God will give it into your hand. And when you have taken the city, you shall set the city on fire, doing as the Lord has ordered. See, I have commanded you." So Joshua sent them out, and they went to the place of ambush and lay between Bethel and Ai, to the west of Ai, but Joshua spent that night with the people. In the morning Joshua rose early and mustered the people and went up with the elders of Israel before the people of Ai. All the fighting men who were with him went up and drew near before the city and camped on the north side of Ai, with a ravine between them and Ai. Taking about 5,000 men, he set them in ambush between Bethel and Ai, to the west of the city. So they stationed the forces, the main encampment that was north of the city and its rear guard west of the city. And Joshua went that night into the valley. When the king of Ai saw this, he and his people, the inhabitants of the city, hurried out early in the morning to the meeting place facing the Arabah to meet Israel in battle. But he did not know that there was an ambush against him behind the city. And Joshua and all Israel made a pretense of being beaten before them and fled in the direction of the wilderness. So all the people who were in the city were called together to pursue them. And as they pursued Joshua, they were drawn away from the city. There was not a man left in Ai who did not go out after Israel. They left the city open and pursued Israel. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Stretch out the sword that is in your hand toward Ai, for I will give it into your hand." And Joshua stretched out the sword that was in his hand toward the city. As soon as he stretched out his hand, the troops in ambush rose quickly out of their place and rushed forward. They entered the city, took it, and at once set the city on fire. So when the men of Ai looked back, the smoke of the city was rising to the sky. They had no power to flee this way or that, for the people who fled to the wilderness turned back against the pursuers. When Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city, and the smoke of the city was rising, then they turned back and struck down the men of Ai. And the other Israelites came out from the city against them, so they were surrounded by Israelites, some on one side and some on the other. And Israel struck them down until no one was left who survived or escaped. But the king of Ai was taken alive and brought to Joshua. When Israel had finished killing all the inhabitants of Ai in the open wilderness where they pursued them, and when all of them to the very last had fallen by the edge of the sword, all Israel returned to Ai and attacked it with the edge of the sword. The total of those who fell that day, both men and women, was 12,000, all the people of Ai. For Joshua did not draw back his hand with which he stretched out the sword until he had utterly destroyed all the inhabitants of Ai. Only the livestock and the spoil of the city Israel plundered for themselves, according to the word of the Lord that he had issued to Joshua. So Joshua burned Ai and made it forever a heap of ruins, as it is to this day. And he hanged the king of Ai on a tree until evening. And at sunset Joshua commanded, and they took his body down from the tree, threw it down at the entrance of the gate of the city, and raised over it a great heap of stones, which stands there to this day. Then Joshua built on Mount Ebal an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the Israelites, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of unhewn stones on which no iron tool had been used. And they offered on it burnt offerings to the Lord and sacrificed offerings of well-being. And there, in the presence of the Israelites, Joshua wrote on the stones a copy of the law of Moses that he had written. All Israel, alien as well as native born, with their elders and officials, and their judges stood opposite sides of the ark in front of the Levitical priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, half of them in front of Mount Gerizim and half of them in front of Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded earlier that they should bless the people of Israel. And afterward he read all the words of the law, blessings and curses, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses commanded that Joshua did not read before that assembly. The assembly of all Israel, and the women, and the little ones, and the aliens who resided among them. Chapter 9. Now when all the kings who were beyond the Jordan in the hill country and in the lowland all along the coast of the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites heard of this, they gathered together with one accord to fight Joshua and Israel. But when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai, they on their part acted with cunning. They went and prepared provisions and took worn-out sacks for their donkeys and wineskins, worn out and torn and mended, with worn-out patched sandals on their feet and worn-out clothes, and all their provisions were dry and moldy. They went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal and said to him and to all Israelites, "We have come from a far country, so now make a treaty with us." The Israelites said to the Hivites, "Perhaps you live among us, then how can we make a treaty with you?" They said to Joshua, "We are your servants." And Joshua said to them, "Who are you, and where do you come from?" They said to him, "Your servants have come from a very far country because of the name of the Lord your God. For we have heard a report of him, of all that he did in Egypt, and of all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, King Sihon of Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country said to us, 'Take provisions in your hand for the journey. Go to meet them and say to them, We are your servants. Come now, make a treaty with us. Here is our bread. It was still warm when we took it from our houses as our food for the journey, on the day we set out to come to you, but now, see, it is dry and moldy. These wineskins were new when we filled them, and see, they are burst, and these garments and sandals of ours are worn out from the very long journey.' So the leaders partook of their provisions and did not ask direction from the Lord. And Joshua made peace with them, guaranteeing their lives by a treaty, and the leaders of the congregation swore an oath to them. But when 3 days had passed after they had made the treaty with them, they heard that they were their neighbors and were living among them. So the Israelites set out and reached their cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon, Kephireth, Beeroth, and Kiriath Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them because the leaders of the congregation had sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. Then all the congregation murmured against the leaders. But all the leaders said to the congregation, "We have sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel, and now we must not touch them. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live, so that the wrath may not come upon us because of the oath that we swore to them." The leaders said to them, "Let them live." So they became woodcutters and drawers of water for all the congregation, as the leaders had decided concerning them. Joshua summoned them and said to them, "Why did you deceive us, saying, 'We are very far from you,' while in fact you are living among us? Now therefore you are cursed, and some of you shall always be slaves, woodcutters and drawers of water for the house of my God." They answered Joshua, "Because it was told to your servants for a certainty that the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land before you. So we were in great fear for our lives because of you and did this thing. And now we are in your hand. Do as it seems good and right in your sight to do to us." This is what he did for them. He saved them from the Israelites, and they did not kill them. But on that day Joshua made them woodcutters and drawers of water for the congregation, and for the altar of the Lord, to continue to this day in the place that he should choose. This ends the reading for today. In the text we saw one victory and one very costly mistake. They learned the hard way that not every offer is what it seems. Have you ever made a decision too quickly and then regretted it? I have. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you have, and if you're enjoying this journey, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. I hope you have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care.